The room was dark, lit only by the faint glow of a dying star outside the window. The air was thick with tension, and the sound of hurried footsteps echoed through the hallway. A man sat alone, his face buried in his hands. He was just an ordinary human, a mechanic who fixed starships for a living. But tonight, his life was about to change forever. The door burst open, and two figures rushed in. The man looked up, startled. Standing before him were two aliens, a woman and a young girl. The woman was tall and elegant, her skin shimmering like starlight. Her eyes were filled with desperation. The girl clung to her mother's hand, her small face pale with fear. "Please," the woman said, her voice trembling. "You must help us." The man stared at them, confused. "Who are you? What's going on?" The woman fell to her knees, pulling her daughter down with her. "I am the princess of the Kryn Empire. This is my daughter. We have nowhere else to go. You are our only hope." The man's heart raced. A princess? An empire? This had to be a mistake. He was nobody, just a mechanic. "I don't understand. Why me?" The princess looked into his eyes, her gaze piercing. "In our culture, humans are seen as symbols of strength and hope. My people are dying. Our empire is falling. A warlord has taken control, and he will stop at nothing to destroy us. If you do not help us, we will die." The man shook his head. "I can't help you. I'm not a soldier or a hero. I fix ships. That's all I do." The little girl stepped forward, her small hands clutching the hem of his shirt. "Please," she whispered. "I don't want to die." Her voice broke his heart. He looked at her, then at the princess. "What do you want from me?" The princess took a deep breath. "Take us as your concubines. Protect us. Hide us from the warlord. If you do this, you will save not only our lives but the future of our people." The man's mind raced. This was insane. He couldn't take responsibility for two lives, especially not a princess and her daughter. But the fear in their eyes was real. The little girl's tears were real. He couldn't just turn them away. Before he could answer, the sound of heavy boots echoed in the hallway. The princess's eyes widened in panic. "They've found us." The man grabbed their hands. "Come with me. Now." He led them through a hidden door in the back of the room, into a narrow passageway. The sound of shouting grew louder behind them. The man's heart pounded as he ran, pulling the princess and her daughter along. He didn't know what he was doing or where they were going. All he knew was that he couldn't let them die. As they ran, the princess looked at him with gratitude. "Thank you," she said softly. The man didn't respond. He was too focused on getting them to safety. But deep down, he knew his life would never be the same. He had stepped into a world of danger and mystery, and there was no turning back. The hidden passage led to a small, dimly lit storage room. The man closed the door behind them and leaned against it, trying to catch his breath. The princess and her daughter stood in the corner, their eyes wide with fear. The little girl clung to her mother, her small body trembling. The man looked at them, still struggling to process what had just happened. "Who are you really?" he asked. "And why are they after you?" The princess took a deep breath, her voice steady but filled with sorrow. "I am Lyra, the last princess of the Kryn Empire. This is my daughter, Kayla. Our empire was once peaceful and prosperous, but everything changed when the warlord Zorak rose to power. He betrayed my family, killed my husband, and now seeks to destroy us completely." The man frowned. Why would he want to kill a child? Lyra's eyes filled with tears. "Kayla is not just my daughter. She is the last heir to the Kryn throne. If Zorak eliminates her, he can claim the throne for himself. He will stop at nothing to see her dead. The man's heart ached as he looked at the little girl. She couldn't have been more than 6 or 7 years old. Her innocence was heartbreaking, and the thought of someone wanting to harm her made his blood boil. But he still didn't understand why they had come to him. "I'm just a mechanic," he said, running a hand through his hair. "I don't know anything about empires or warlords. Why did you come to me?" Lyra stepped closer, her gaze intense. "In our culture, humans are revered. Stories of your bravery and resilience have spread across the stars. When we had nowhere else to turn, I thought of you. You are our only hope." The man shook his head. "You've got the wrong guy. I'm not brave or resilient. I fix ships. That's all I do." Kayla let go of her mother's hand and walked up to him. She looked up at him with big, pleading eyes. "Please," she said softly. "You can save us. I know you can." Her words hit him like a punch to the gut. He wanted to help her, but the fear of failure held him back. What if he couldn't protect them? What if he got them killed? Lyra seemed to sense his hesitation. "I know this is a lot to ask," she said gently. "But if you don't help us, we have no one else. Zorak soldiers are everywhere. They will find us, and they will kill us." The man looked at her, then at Kayla. The weight of their lives rested on his shoulders, and it felt unbearable. But how could he say no? How could he turn away from a child in need? Before he could answer, the sound of voices echoed from the hallway. The man's heart skipped a beat. "They're here," he whispered. Lyra's face paled. "What do we do?" The man thought quickly. "There's a ship in the docking bay. It's old, but it should still work. If we can get to it, we might be able to escape." Lyra nodded. "Lead the way." The man opened the door slightly and peeked into the hallway. 2 soldiers stood at the far end, their weapons drawn. He closed the door quietly and turned to Lyra and Kayla. "We'll have to be quick and quiet. Follow me, and don't make a sound." They nodded, their faces filled with determination. The man took a deep breath and opened the door again. He stepped into the hallway, motioning for them to follow. They moved silently, staying close to the walls. The soldiers were too busy searching the rooms to notice them. As they reached the end of the hallway, the man pointed to a door on the left. "The docking bay is through there. Once we're inside, we run for the ship." Lyra and Kayla nodded. The man opened the door slowly, and they slipped inside. The docking bay was vast, filled with ships of all shapes and sizes. The man's old ship was in the far corner, its lights flickering faintly. "There it is," he whispered. "Let's go." They ran across the docking bay, their footsteps echoing in the empty space. Just as they reached the ship, a voice shouted behind them. "Stop! Don't move!" The man turned to see a group of soldiers rushing toward them. He grabbed Lyra and Kayla and pushed them toward the ship. "Get inside. Now!" Lyra and Kayla climbed into the ship as the man hurried to the control panel. He punched in the code to start the engines, his hands shaking. The soldiers were getting closer, their weapons raised. Come on," he muttered, watching the progress bar on the screen. The engines roared to life just as the soldiers opened fire. The ship's shields absorbed the blasts, and the man jumped inside, slamming the door shut. He ran to the cockpit and took the controls. The ship lifted off the ground, narrowly avoiding another round of fire. As they soared out of the docking bay and into the open sky, the man let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. Lyra and Kayla stood behind him, their faces filled with relief. "Thank you," Lyra said softly. "You've given us a chance." The man didn't respond. He was too focused on flying the ship, but deep down, he knew his life had changed forever. He had taken on a responsibility he never asked for, but he couldn't turn back now. He had to protect them, no matter what. The ship soared through the stars, leaving the planet far behind. The man sat in the cockpit, his hands gripping the controls tightly. His heart was still racing from the narrow escape, but he forced himself to stay calm. He had to focus. They weren't safe yet. Lyra and Kayla sat quietly behind him, their eyes fixed on the vast expanse of space outside the window. The silence was heavy, filled with unspoken fears and questions. Finally, Lyra spoke. "Where are we going?" she asked softly. The man hesitated. He hadn't thought that far ahead. "I don't know," he admitted. "Somewhere safe. Somewhere Zorak soldiers can't find us." Lyra nodded, but her expression was troubled. "Zorak's reach is vast. There are few places in the galaxy where we can hide." The man glanced at her. "Then we'll have to find one of those places." Kayla, who had been silent until now, looked up at him with wide eyes. "Are we going to be okay?" Her voice was small and filled with fear. The man's heart ached for her. He forced a smile. "We'll be fine. I'll make sure of it." Kayla nodded, but she didn't look convinced. She leaned against her mother, her small hand clutching Lyra's sleeve. Lyra wrapped an arm around her daughter, holding her close. The man turned back to the controls, his mind racing. He needed a plan. They couldn't keep flying aimlessly forever. The ship's fuel was limited, and they would need supplies soon. But where could they go? As he scanned the star map, an idea came to him. "There's a trading post on the edge of the galaxy," he said. "It's neutral territory. Zorak soldiers shouldn't be there. We can stop for supplies and figure out our next move." Lyra nodded. "That sounds like a good plan." The man set the coordinates and leaned back in his seat. The journey would take a few hours, and he needed to rest. But he couldn't shake the feeling of unease. Zorak soldiers were relentless, and he knew they wouldn't give up easily. As the ship cruised through space, Kayla began to relax. She peered out the window, her eyes filled with wonder. "It's so beautiful," she whispered. The man glanced at her and smiled. "It is, isn't it?" Kayla turned to him, her fear momentarily forgotten. "Have you been to lots of places?" The man chuckled. "A few. But I've mostly stayed close to home. Fixing ships doesn't leave much time for travel." Kayla's eyes sparkled with curiosity. "What's your favorite place?" The man thought for a moment. "There's a planet called Terra Nova. It's covered in forests and rivers. The air is fresh, and the sky is always blue. It's peaceful there." Kayla's face lit up. "That sounds amazing. Can we go there?" The man hesitated. Terra Nova was far away, and the journey would be dangerous. But the hope in Kayla's eyes made him want to try. "Maybe," he said gently. "We'll see." Kayla smiled, and for the first time since they had met, she looked like a normal, happy child. The man felt a pang of guilt. She deserved a better life than this, running and hiding, always looking over her shoulder. As the hours passed, the group began to relax. Lyra told stories of her home planet, describing its golden cities and sparkling oceans. Kayla listened intently, her eyes wide with wonder. The man found himself drawn into the stories, imagining a world far different from his own. But the peace didn't last long. An alarm blared on the ship's console, jolting them back to reality. The man's heart skipped a beat as he checked the readings. "What's wrong?" Lyra asked, her voice tense. The man's face was grim. "We're being followed. Another ship is closing in on us." Lyra's eyes widened in fear. "Zorak soldiers?" The man nodded. "Probably. Hold on. I'm going to try to lose them. He pushed the ship's engines to their limit, weaving through asteroid fields and nebulae. The pursuing ship stayed close, its weapons locked onto them. The man's hands were steady on the controls, but his mind was racing. They couldn't outrun them forever. We need to find a place to hide, he muttered. Lyra leaned forward, studying the star map. There's a nearby moon. It's uninhabited, but it has dense forests. We might be able to lose them there. The man nodded. Good idea. He changed course, heading for the moon. As they entered its atmosphere, the ship shook violently. The man struggled to keep it steady, his eyes fixed on the terrain below. The forests were thick and dark, perfect for hiding. He landed the ship in a clearing, the engine sputtering as they shut down. The group sat in silence, listening for any sign of the pursuing ship. Minutes passed, and there was nothing but the sound of the wind rustling through the trees. I think we lost them, the man said finally. Lyra let out a breath of relief. Thank you. Kayla looked up at him, her eyes filled with admiration. You're really brave. The man smiled faintly. I'm just doing what I can. As they stepped out of the ship, the man felt a sense of determination. They weren't safe yet, but they had a chance. And as long as he was with them, he would do everything in his power to protect Lyra and Kayla. The moon's forest was dense and eerily quiet. The trees towered above them, their branches twisting together to block out the sky. The man led the way, his eyes scanning the shadows for any sign of danger. Lyra and Kayla followed close behind, their footsteps soft on the damp ground. We need to find shelter, the man whispered. And fast. They'll be searching for us. Lyra nodded, her face pale but determined. There might be caves nearby. We used to hide in them during storms. The man glanced at her. Let's hope we find one before they find us. They moved quickly but carefully, staying low to avoid being seen. The forest was alive with strange sounds, rustling leaves, distant animal calls, and the occasional creak of branches. Every noise made the man's heart race, but he forced himself to stay calm. He had to be strong for Lyra and Kayla. After what felt like hours, they finally found a small cave hidden behind a cluster of rocks. The man checked inside to make sure it was empty, then motioned for Lyra and Kayla to enter. The cave was dark and damp, but it was safe, for now. We'll stay here until it's safe to move, the man said, keeping his voice low. Lyra sat down on the ground, pulling Kayla close. The little girl was shivering, her eyes wide with fear. The man knelt beside them, his expression softening. Hey, he said gently. We're going to be okay. I promise. Kayla looked up at him, her lip trembling. What if they find us? The man hesitated, then smiled. They won't. I won't let them. Kayla nodded, but she didn't look convinced. The man sighed and sat back, his mind racing. They couldn't stay here forever. They needed a plan. As the hours passed, the forest grew darker. The man kept watch at the entrance of the cave, his eyes fixed on the shadows. He could feel the tension in the air, like a storm about to break. And then, he heard it, the sound of footsteps. His heart skipped a beat. He turned to Lyra and Kayla, his voice barely a whisper. Stay here. Don't make a sound. Lyra nodded, her eyes filled with fear. The man crept out of the cave, his body tense. He moved silently through the trees, his eyes scanning the darkness. The footsteps were getting closer. He crouched behind a tree, his breath shallow. Two figures emerged from the shadows, soldiers in dark armor, their weapons drawn. The man's heart pounded as he watched them. They were Zorak's elite, trained to hunt and kill. The soldiers stopped a few feet away, their voices low. They couldn't have gone far, one of them said. Search the area. The man's mind raced. He had to do something. If they found the cave, it would be over. He looked around, searching for anything he could use. His eyes landed on a large rock nearby. He picked it up quietly, his hands trembling. He knew he couldn't take them both on, but he had to try. He waited until the soldiers were close, then stepped out from behind the tree. "Hey!" he shouted, throwing the rock as hard as he could. The rock hit one of the soldiers in the head, knocking him to the ground. The other soldier turned, raising his weapon. The man charged at him, tackling him before he could fire. They struggled on the ground, the soldier's strength surprising him. The man grabbed a loose branch and swung it, hitting the soldier in the side. The soldier grunted in pain, but he didn't let go. The man fought with everything he had, his fear and anger driving him. Finally, he managed to knock the soldier out. Breathing heavily, he stood up and looked around. The first soldier was still unconscious, and the second was out cold. He knew more would come soon. He had to get back to the cave. He ran back as fast as he could, his heart pounding. Lyra and Kayla were waiting at the entrance, their faces filled with fear. "We have to go," he said, his voice urgent. "Now." Lyra nodded, grabbing Kayla's hand. They ran through the forest, the man leading the way. He didn't know where they were going, but they had to put as much distance between themselves and the soldiers as possible. As they ran, the sound of more footsteps echoed behind them. The man's heart sank. They were being followed again. "This way," he shouted, pulling them toward a steep hill. They climbed as fast as they could, the soldiers close behind. At the top of the hill, the man saw a river below. It was their only chance. "Jump!" he yelled. Without hesitation, they leaped into the river. The cold water hit them like a shock, but they kept moving, swimming to the other side. The soldiers stopped at the edge of the river, shouting in frustration. The man helped Lyra and Kayla out of the water, his body trembling with exhaustion. They were safe, for now. Lyra looked at him, her eyes filled with gratitude. "You saved us again." The man shook his head. "We're not out of this yet. But we'll keep fighting. I won't let them hurt you." Kayla hugged him tightly, her small arms wrapping around his waist. "Thank you," she whispered. The man held her close, his heart swelling with determination. He didn't know what the future held, but he knew one thing for sure: he would do whatever it took to protect them. The group huddled together under the cover of a large tree, their clothes still damp from the river. The forest was quiet now, the soldiers' shouts fading into the distance. The man kept watch, his eyes scanning the shadows for any sign of movement. He knew they couldn't stay here long, but they needed a moment to catch their breath. Lyra sat beside him, her face pale and drawn. Kayla leaned against her mother, her eyes heavy with exhaustion. The man glanced at them, his heart aching. They had been through so much, and there was still a long way to go. "We need to keep moving," he said softly. "But first, we need a plan. We can't keep running forever." Lyra nodded, her expression troubled. "You're right. But where can we go? Zorak soldiers are everywhere." The man frowned. "There has to be somewhere safe. Somewhere he can't reach us." Lyra hesitated, then took a deep breath. "There is one place. But it's dangerous." The man looked at her, his curiosity piqued. "Where?" Lyra's eyes were filled with uncertainty. "The Temple of Kryn. It's an ancient sanctuary, hidden deep within the mountains. It's said to be protected by powerful forces. If we can reach it, we might be safe." The man raised an eyebrow. "Might be?" Lyra sighed. "The temple is guarded by traps and puzzles. Many have tried to enter, but few have succeeded. But if we can get inside, Zorak soldiers won't be able to follow us." The man considered this. It was a risky plan, but they were running out of options. Do you know how to get there? Lyra nodded. I've studied the ancient texts. I can guide us. The man looked at Kayla, who was now asleep in her mother's arms. What about her? Can she handle the journey? Lyra's expression softened as she brushed a strand of hair from Kayla's face. She's stronger than she looks. But there's something you need to know. The man frowned. What is it? Lyra hesitated, her eyes filled with emotion. Kayla is not just my daughter. She is the last heir to the Kryn throne. Her father was the king, and she is the only one who can unite our people against Zorak. The man's eyes widened in shock. She's the heir? Lyra nodded. Zorak knows this. That's why he's hunting us. If he eliminates Kayla, he can claim the throne for himself. But if we can protect her, she can rally our people and lead them to freedom. The man stared at Kayla, his mind racing. He had known there was something special about her, but he hadn't realized the weight of her destiny. Why didn't you tell me this before? Lyra looked down, her voice filled with guilt. I was afraid. Afraid you wouldn't help us if you knew the truth. But I see now that I was wrong. You've risked everything to protect us, and you deserve to know. The man sighed, running a hand through his hair. This changes everything. If Zorak finds out who she is. He won't, Lyra said firmly. Not if we can reach the temple. The man nodded, his resolve hardening. Then that's what we'll do. We'll get her to the temple, no matter what it takes. Lyra's eyes filled with gratitude. Thank you. You have no idea what this means to me. The man smiled faintly. I'm just doing what's right. As they sat in silence, the weight of their mission settled over them. The man looked at Kayla, her small face peaceful in sleep. She was just a child, but she carried the hopes of an entire people on her shoulders. He couldn't let her down. After a while, Kayla stirred, her eyes fluttering open. She looked up at her mother, then at the man. Are we safe? She asked softly. The man smiled, his voice gentle. For now. But we need to keep moving. Can you do that? Kayla nodded, her expression determined. I can. The man helped her to her feet, his heart swelling with admiration. Despite everything, she was brave and strong. He knew they had a long and difficult journey ahead, but with Kayla's spirit and Lyra's guidance, they had a chance. As they set off through the forest, the man felt a renewed sense of purpose. He wasn't just protecting a princess and her daughter anymore. He was protecting the future of an entire civilization. And he would do whatever it took to ensure that future was safe. The journey to the Temple of Kryn was long and grueling. The forest gave way to rocky terrain, and the air grew colder as they climbed higher into the mountains. The man led the way, his eyes scanning the path for any signs of danger. Lyra followed close behind, guiding them with the knowledge she had gained from the ancient texts. Kayla walked between them, her small hand clutching her mother's. Despite the challenges, the group had grown closer. The man had started to see Lyra and Kayla not just as people he needed to protect, but as family. Kayla, in particular, had warmed up to him, often asking him questions about his life and sharing stories of her own. Her laughter was a bright spot in their difficult journey. As they reached a narrow pass between two cliffs, the man stopped and turned to Lyra. How much farther? Lyra consulted the map she had drawn from memory. Not far. The temple should be just beyond this pass. The man nodded, feeling a glimmer of hope. They were so close. But as they started through the pass, a voice called out from behind them. Stop right there. The man spun around, his heart sinking. A group of soldiers stood at the entrance of the pass, their weapons drawn. At the front of the group was a figure the man recognized, a traitor they had met at the last outpost. The man's eyes narrowed in anger. You, he said, his voice cold. You betrayed us. The traitor smirked. I had no choice. Zorak's reward was too good to pass up. Lyra stepped forward, her eyes blazing with fury. How could you? We trusted you. The traitor shrugged. Trust is a luxury none of us can afford. Now, hand over the girl, and I might let you live. The man clenched his fists, his mind racing. They were outnumbered and trapped. But he couldn't let them take Kayla. He wouldn't. Stay behind me, he whispered to Lyra and Kayla. The soldiers advanced, their weapons raised. The man knew he couldn't fight them all, but he had to try. He grabbed a rock from the ground and hurled it at the nearest soldier, hitting him in the chest. The soldier stumbled, giving the man a moment to act. Run, he shouted, pushing Lyra and Kayla toward the narrow path. I'll hold them off. Lyra hesitated, her eyes filled with fear. But. Go, the man insisted. Get to the temple. I'll find you. Lyra nodded, tears in her eyes. She grabbed Kayla's hand and ran, disappearing into the pass. The man turned to face the soldiers, his heart pounding. He knew he might not survive this, but he had to buy them time. The soldiers charged at him, and the man fought with everything he had. He dodged their attacks, using the terrain to his advantage. But there were too many of them. A blow to his side sent him to the ground, pain shooting through his body. As he struggled to get up, the traitor stood over him, a cruel smile on his face. You should have stayed out of this. The man glared at him, his voice defiant. You'll never win. She's stronger than you think. The traitor laughed. We'll see about that. Before the traitor could say more, a loud roar echoed through the pass. The ground shook, and the soldiers looked around in fear. The man used the distraction to his advantage, kicking the traitor's legs out from under him. He scrambled to his feet, ignoring the pain in his side. As he turned to run, he saw a massive creature emerge from the shadows, a beast with glowing eyes and sharp claws. The soldiers screamed and scattered, but the creature was too fast. It tore through them with terrifying speed. The man didn't wait to see what happened next. He ran through the pass, his heart pounding. He had to find Lyra and Kayla. When he finally caught up to them, they were standing at the entrance of the temple. Lyra's face lit up with relief when she saw him. You're alive, she exclaimed. The man nodded, breathing heavily. Barely. But we're not safe yet. We need to get inside. Lyra turned to the temple doors, which were covered in ancient symbols. She traced her fingers over the markings, her brow furrowed in concentration. There's a puzzle here. We need to solve it to open the doors. Kayla stepped forward, her eyes wide with curiosity. Can I help? Lyra smiled softly. Of course. As they worked together to solve the puzzle, the man kept watch, his eyes scanning the pass for any sign of the soldiers or the creature. His heart was still racing, but he felt a glimmer of hope. They were so close to safety. Finally, the doors creaked open, revealing a dark and ancient interior. The man stepped inside, his senses on high alert. The temple was vast and filled with strange artifacts, but it felt safe, like a sanctuary. Lyra and Kayla followed him inside, and the doors closed behind them with a loud thud. The man let out a breath of relief, but he knew their journey wasn't over yet. Zorak's reach was long, and he wouldn't stop until he had Kayla. As they explored the temple, the man felt a renewed sense of determination. They had faced betrayal and danger, but they were still standing. And as long as they were together, they had a chance. The Temple of Kryn was a place of ancient power, its walls lined with glowing symbols and its air thick with the scent of incense. The man, Lyra, and Kayla stood in the center of the main chamber, their eyes wide with awe. Despite the danger they had faced, the temple felt like a sanctuary, a place where they could finally catch their breath. But the man knew they couldn't stay here forever. Zorak's soldiers were still out there, and it was only a matter of time before they found a way into the temple. They needed a plan. "We can't just hide," the man said, breaking the silence. "We need to fight back." Lyra nodded, her expression determined. "You're right. But we can't do it alone. We need allies." The man frowned. "Where can we find allies?" "Zorak has taken control of most of the empire." Lyra's eyes lit up with an idea. "The Kryn resistance. There are still those who are loyal to the throne. If we can reach them, they'll help us." The man considered this. It was a risky plan, but it was their best chance. "Do you know how to find them?" Lyra hesitated. "I've heard rumors of a hidden base in the mountains. If we can get there, we might be able to rally their support." The man nodded. "Then that's what we'll do. But we'll need to be careful. Zorak's soldiers are everywhere." Kayla, who had been quiet until now, stepped forward. "I want to help too." The man smiled faintly. "You already are, Kayla. Just by being here, you're giving people hope." Kayla's eyes sparkled with determination. "I want to do more. I want to help save our people." Lyra knelt beside her daughter, her voice gentle. "You will, my love. But for now, we need to stay safe. That's the best way you can help." Kayla nodded, though she still looked eager to do more. The man felt a pang of admiration for her. Despite everything, she was brave and strong. As they prepared to leave the temple, the man felt a sense of urgency. They had been lucky so far, but their luck wouldn't last forever. They needed to act quickly. The journey to the resistance base was long and difficult. They traveled through rugged terrain, avoiding main roads and staying hidden in the shadows. The man kept a close eye on Kayla, making sure she wasn't too tired or scared. But the little girl surprised him with her resilience, never complaining and always keeping up. After days of travel, they finally reached the base, a hidden cave deep in the mountains. The entrance was guarded by two armed figures, who stepped forward as the group approached. "Who goes there?" one of them demanded. Lyra stepped forward, her voice steady. "I am Lyra, Princess of the Kryn Empire. This is my daughter, Kayla, the last heir to the throne. We seek your help." The guards exchanged a glance, then nodded. "Come with us." They were led into the cave, which was filled with people, men, women, and children, all working together to prepare for battle. The man felt a surge of hope. These were the people who could help them defeat Zorak. A tall, stern-looking man approached them, his eyes narrowing as he studied the group. "Princess Lyra," he said, his voice filled with disbelief. "Is it really you?" Lyra nodded. "It's me, Yarek. And this is my daughter, Kayla." Jarek's expression softened as he looked at Kayla. "The last heir to the throne. We've been waiting for you." Kayla stepped forward, her voice small but steady. "We need your help. Zorak is hurting our people, and we have to stop him." Yarek knelt before her, his eyes filled with respect. "You have our loyalty, little one. We will fight for you." The man felt a lump in his throat as he watched the scene. These people had been waiting for a leader, and now they had found one in Kayla. He knew the road ahead would be difficult, but they had a chance. As the group settled into the base, the man and Lyra met with Yarek to discuss their plan. "Zorak's forces are strong," Yarek said, his voice grim. "But if we can rally more supporters, we might be able to take him down." Lyra nodded. "We need to spread the word. Let the people know that Kayla is alive and that there is hope." The man leaned forward, his expression serious. "We'll also need to strike quickly. Zorak won't expect us to attack, and that could give us the advantage. Yarok agreed. We'll start preparing immediately. But we'll need your help. The man nodded. Whatever it takes. As they worked together to prepare for the battle, the man felt a sense of purpose. They were no longer just running and hiding. They were fighting back, and they had a real chance of winning. That night, as the group gathered around a fire, Kayla sat beside the man, her eyes reflecting the flames. "Do you think we can win?" she asked softly. The man smiled, his voice gentle. "I do. Because of you, Kayla. You've given these people hope, and that's more powerful than anything Zorak has." Kayla nodded, her expression thoughtful. "I'll do my best. For my people." The man felt a swell of pride. She was just a child, but she carried the weight of an empire on her shoulders. And he knew, no matter what happened, he would stand by her side. The resistance base buzzed with activity as everyone prepared for the upcoming battle. Weapons were sharpened, strategies were discussed, and the air was thick with tension. The man, Lyra, and Kayla stood at the center of it all, their presence inspiring hope and determination in the fighters around them. Yarok approached the group, his expression serious. "We're ready. The plan is in place, and our scouts have confirmed Zorak's location. He's stationed at the old palace, surrounded by his elite guards." The man nodded, his jaw tight. "Then it's time to end this." Lyra placed a hand on his arm, her eyes filled with concern. "Be careful. Zorak is ruthless, and he won't go down without a fight." The man gave her a reassuring smile. "We've come this far. We're not backing down now." Kayla stepped forward, her small face set with determination. "I want to help too." The man knelt before her, his voice gentle but firm. "Kayla, you've already done so much. Your courage has brought us here. But this battle is too dangerous. You need to stay here, where it's safe." Kayla's eyes filled with tears, but she nodded. "Okay. But promise me you'll come back." The man's heart ached at her words. He placed a hand on her shoulder. "I promise." As the group prepared to leave, Lyra pulled the man aside. "Take care of yourself," she said softly. "We need you." The man smiled faintly. "I'll do my best. And when this is over, we'll start building a better future, for Kayla, and for everyone." With that, the group set out for the palace, their hearts filled with determination. The journey was tense, every step bringing them closer to the final showdown. The man's mind raced with thoughts of what lay ahead, but he pushed his fears aside. He had a job to do. When they reached the palace, the sight of Zorak's forces was daunting. The palace was heavily guarded, with soldiers patrolling every entrance. But the resistance fighters were ready. They moved quickly and quietly, taking out the guards one by one. The man led a small group through a side entrance, his heart pounding as they made their way to the throne room. He knew Zorak would be there, waiting for them. When they burst into the throne room, Zorak was seated on the throne, his expression calm but menacing. He stood as they entered, his eyes narrowing as he studied the group. "So, you've come," he said, his voice cold. "I must admit, I'm impressed. You've caused me quite a bit of trouble." The man stepped forward, his voice steady. "It's over, Zorak. Your reign of terror ends here." Zorak laughed, a harsh, grating sound. "You think you can defeat me? I am the rightful ruler of this empire. That child you protect is nothing but a relic of the past." The man's fists clenched. "Kayla is the future. And we'll fight to protect her." Zorak's expression darkened. "Then you'll die with her." With a wave of his hand, Zorak's elite guards charged forward. The man and his group fought back, their weapons clashing in a fierce battle. The room was filled with the sounds of metal against metal, shouts, and cries of pain. The man fought with everything he had, his focus solely on protecting his friends and defeating Zorak. But the guards were skilled, and the battle was intense. Just as the man thought they might be overwhelmed, reinforcements arrived, Lyra and Yarok, leading a group of resistance fighters. The tide of the battle turned, and Zorak's guards began to fall. Zorak himself stepped forward, his eyes blazing with fury. He drew a sword and charged at the man, their weapons clashing with a loud clang. The fight was brutal, each strike filled with anger and desperation. The man's body ached, but he pushed through the pain, his determination unwavering. Finally, he saw an opening and struck, disarming Zorak and knocking him to the ground. Zorak glared up at him, his voice filled with venom. "You think this changes anything? The Empire is mine. You can't stop me." The man stood over him, his voice cold. "It's already changed. The people have hope now. And as long as they have hope, you'll never win." With that, he struck the final blow, ending Zorak's reign of terror. The room fell silent as Zorak's body slumped to the ground. The man stood there, breathing heavily, his mind racing with the weight of what he had done. Lyra approached him, her eyes filled with relief and gratitude. "It's over," she said softly. The man nodded, his voice weary. "It's over." As the resistance fighters cheered and embraced each other, the man felt a sense of peace. They had won, but the fight had come at a cost. He knew there was still much to do, rebuilding the Empire, ensuring Kayla's safety, and healing the wounds of the past. But for now, they had hope. And that was enough. The palace, once a symbol of fear and oppression, now buzzed with hope and renewal. The resistance fighters worked tirelessly to clean and repair the damage caused by Zorak's rule. The man stood in the throne room, watching as people came together to rebuild their home. It was a sight that filled him with pride. Lyra approached him, her face glowing with relief. "It's hard to believe it's finally over," she said softly. The man nodded, his eyes scanning the room. "It's not just over. It's a new beginning." Lyra smiled, her gratitude evident. "None of this would have been possible without you. You gave us hope when we had none." The man shook his head. "I just did what I thought was right. Kayla is the real hero here. She's the one who inspired everyone to keep fighting." As if on cue, Kayla entered the room, her small figure radiating confidence. She was dressed in simple but elegant clothing, a symbol of her new role as the heir to the Kryn throne. The people bowed as she passed, their respect and admiration clear. Kayla walked up to the man, her eyes shining with gratitude. "Thank you," she said, her voice steady. "You saved us." The man knelt before her, his voice gentle. "You saved yourself, Kayla. Your courage and strength brought us all together. I just helped along the way." Kayla smiled, her innocence and wisdom blending in a way that was beyond her years. "I'll never forget what you did for us. You'll always be a part of our family." The man felt a lump in his throat. He had started this journey as a simple mechanic, never imagining he would become a part of something so much bigger. Now, he couldn't imagine his life without Lyra and Kayla. Lyra placed a hand on his shoulder. "Stay with us," she said, her voice filled with sincerity. "Help us rebuild. You've done so much already, but we still need you." The man looked at her, then at Kayla. He wanted to say yes, to stay and be a part of this new beginning. But he knew his place was elsewhere. "I can't," he said gently. "My home is out there, among the stars. I've done what I came to do, and now it's time for me to go back." Lyra's eyes filled with sadness, but she nodded in understanding. "You'll always have a place here, no matter where you go." Kayla hugged him tightly, her small arms wrapping around his neck. "I'll miss you," she whispered. The man held her close, his heart swelling with emotion. "I'll miss you too. But I know you'll do amazing things. You're going to be a great leader. As the sun set over the palace, the man prepared to leave. The people gathered to say goodbye, their gratitude and respect evident in their eyes. Yarok stepped forward, clasping the man's hand firmly. You've done more for us than we can ever repay, Yarok said, his voice filled with sincerity. Thank you. The man smiled faintly. Take care of them. They're in good hands now. With that, he turned and walked away, his heart heavy but full. He had started this journey as a stranger, but he was leaving as a hero. As he boarded his ship and set course for home, he felt a sense of peace. He had made a difference, and that was enough. Epilogue. Months later, the man sat in his small workshop, tinkering with a broken starship engine. Life had returned to normal, but he often found himself thinking about Lyra and Kayla. He wondered how they were doing, if they had succeeded in rebuilding their empire. One day, as he worked, a transmission came through on his console. It was a message from Lyra, accompanied by a hologram of Kayla. The little girl smiled brightly, her eyes filled with joy. We did it, she said, her voice filled with pride. The empire is thriving, and the people are happy. We couldn't have done it without you. The man smiled, his heart swelling with pride. He had played a small part in their story, but it was a part that had changed everything. As he watched the hologram fade, he felt a sense of fulfillment. He had learned that even the smallest actions could make a difference, that courage and selflessness could change the world. And as he returned to his work, he knew he would carry those lessons with him for the rest of his life.